more and more individuals are coming out against Donald Trump publicly, especially when it comes to his decision to use brute force against peaceful protesters in Washington, D.C. Also, he could take his photo op in front of a church in D.C. Now, the latest official who's speaking out against this is Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman General Mark Milley, who announced that he actually regrets participating in Trump's photo op where peaceful protesters were treated this way. This message was actually aired during the graduation for the National Defense University. Here he is, and here's what he had to say.
As many of you saw, the result of the photograph of me at Lafayette Square last week, that sparked a national debate about the role of the military in civil society. I should not have been there. My presence in that moment and in that environment created a perception of the military involved in domestic politics. As a commissioned, uniformed officer, it was a mistake that I have learned from, and I sincerely hope we all can learn from it. We who wear the cloth of our nation come from the people of our nation, and we must hold dear the principle of an apolitical military.
Trump's own defense secretary, Mark Esper, I mean, he did it in, I think, the most timid way, but he still did speak out against what happened in D.C. Mad Dog Mattis, he was the most vocal and strong in his messaging against what Trump did. And now you have the Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman, Mark Milley, saying, no, this is wrong, and I don't agree with it. I shouldn't have been there, and I'm learning. It gives me a little bit of hope because, honestly, if Donald Trump wants to really carry out his fantasy of being a dictator, the only way he could do it would be with the support of the military. And I like hearing military leaders speak out against him because that gives me at least a little bit of hope that they would, choose the right path for this country if things really did get to that.
So, Anna, I think that this story is really important and great news for two different reasons. But before I get to that, I just want to give credit where credit is due. I mean, you called him Mad Dog Mattis. Trump picked the better of the two nicknames he had. And, and then in the middle of massive civil unrest like we haven't seen in our lifetimes, he made sure to tweet about that. Remember, between Chaos and Mad Dog, I'm the one who called him Mad Dog Mattis. Oh, my bad, dog. I didn't know. Okay, so good dog Trump on picking the right nickname. All right, now on to the super important stuff. So, number one, you're right. The overwhelming biggest part of this story is the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the top military officer we have in the country. If he sides with the president, if the president loses the election and wants to stay, then we have a massive, massive, historic, epic problem. This is him basically coming out and saying, I'm not going to do that. So because people start to get concerned. I told you when General Mattis wrote that scathing critique of Donald Trump, which he earlier had said that he was very, very reluctant to do. He wrote a whole book and didn't criticize Trump. It just tweaked him around the edges, but said, I don't want to get into the substance of it. But them using the troops in D.C., inside the country, had Mattis come out and write against Trump. And I told you at the time, it wasn't just because he was critiquing him for that. No, he was sending a message to the rest of the leaders in the military. Do not listen to this man if he loses the election and does not want to give up power. That is the single most important thing. So Milley doing this is saying, well, hey, who cares if you apologize for something that happened about a photo op a week ago? Like, by itself, it's important, but not as important. But him signaling to the rest of us, don't worry. If he gives the order that he's going to stay, I'm not going to let him. That is the biggest relief there is. So at this point, for whatever other differences you might have with Milley, you have to be rooting for him to still be the chairman of the Joint Chiefs come, November and then January.
I have no doubt that when it comes to General Milley's politics, he and I couldn't be more different. But I remember a time in this country where everyone, regardless of their political ideology, understood the importance of actually protecting constitutional rights, democracy, freedom. Now, of course, that didn't play out as much as it should have for various communities, including the Black community in this country. Democracy wasn't always, they've been suppressed from voting historically from this country. Even today, that's happening. But my point is, there seemed to be a value put behind our constitutional rights. And now we're in this situation where the very people who claimed they cared about the Constitution the most, right-wingers who proudly describe themselves as constitutionalists and people who are against tyranny, are now advocating for Trump, the president, to use the U.S. military against its own people, right? So it's just, again, politics aside for a minute, I'm just relieved to hear someone like General Milley take the right stance on this, and I hope more follow.
So the second reason why it's important is, now the rest of the media will not tell you this because that's their sources, their friends, they live together in Washington, etc. People in Washington, including almost all the politicians and almost all of the generals, suck up to power. And so if they thought that Trump was going to win, Milley would have been, at the very least, way more cautious. He would have tread on that ground very, very lightly. And these generals didn't get to where they are without knowing how to play politics, okay? He came out very forcefully to say, no, I shouldn't have done that, and I'm walking it back, okay? And send a clear message that the military will not get involved in politics, okay? So he's also basically there indicating he thinks Trump's going to lose. So he's now concerned about his career after Trump. I'm keeping it real, right?
Yeah, no, you're probably right, yeah.
Yeah, and then if he thought Trump was going to win, he'd be concerned about his career after Trump. And I'm not saying he wouldn't have said that, although I'd be surprised. But he certainly would have been a lot more careful. That was not a careful statement. That was a statement going, no, not going to happen. We're not going to use the military inside the U.S. And we're certainly not going to have Trump stay in office if he didn't win. That's what that message was.
What's incredible is, remember, Donald Trump needed the help of the military and federal law enforcement in order to viciously attack those protesters, peaceful protesters, and it was before curfew even hit. In order for him to just walk through and do his photo op. And what's incredible is that while he's been hiding in his bunker, he's tweeting this. He says, "Our great National Guard troops who took care of the area around the White House could hardly believe how easy it was. A walk in the park," one said. The protesters, agitators, anarchists, Antifa supposedly, and others were handled very easily by the Guard, DC Police, and SS. Great job. So look, yeah, because there was a group of peaceful protesters who were unarmed and completely unsuspecting of what Trump was about to do. So it's almost like, I walked up to someone and I sucker punched them. Couldn't believe how easy it was. Like, okay. It's just, It's unbelievable. He's such a coward.
You know, he said they thought it was, quote unquote, a walk in the park. You know why? Because it was literally a walk in the park. They had peaceful protesters in the park that you come in with armed guards. They don't fight back at all because they were peaceful protesters. And then you turn around and go, ha ha, you didn't fight back at all because you were peaceful. That's why I tear gassed you and then attacked you physically. No, that's not ha-ha. That proves their point, not your point, you schmuck, you dolt. And by the way, we don't use SS as an abbreviation for the Secret Service for good reason, because that was the vicious arm of the Nazi Party. So when you go around saying, when you go around saying my SS cleared the peaceful protesters of the park so easily, it doesn't play well, but nothing that Trump does plays well. And look, last thought on it is, I'm worried that the other reason for that tweet is to agitate people more, to say like, oh yeah, next time if you're a real man, you'll fight back. He's itching for a reason to crack down more, to divide us more, and He keeps calling protesters, including the very peaceful ones in Seattle, terrorists. He calls them domestic terrorists. He wants an excuse to use the military in the country now so that if he uses them to try to stay in office after he loses, it's become normal. So he's literally trying to provoke violence in the country so he counter it with even more violence. That's the sick, sick man we have in the White House right now.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.